Hello, everybody. The big day has arrived. Welcome to the counties final today. So I'm here with Master Peter Wells.
Hi, nice to be here, Natasha. Thanks.
And we're going to be following several matches. So where we've got live boards, we are going to be following from 2:00. We're going to be following the counties championships. Which is a big match between Northumberland and Yorkshire, which starts at 2:00. And in the meantime, already started is the minor counties, which is between Devon and Norfolk, and also the under 2050s between Essex and Surrey. So we'll be following those games, the live boards from those games. And just before we start, let's have a look at all the matches that are going on today. So there's no fewer than 6 finals happening today. And the ones we didn't talk about yet, we have also other rating bands. So the under 1850s is between Yorkshire and Middlesex. The under 1650s is between Surrey and Warwickshire. And the under 1450s is between Essex and Surrey. So lots of matches. We'll be keeping an eye on the scores as we go through the afternoon. And we're going to start off with the top games. So let's start with the minor counties. And if I share my screen here. Minor counties. Okie doke. So hopefully you can, if I actually show it on the stream, there you go. Hopefully you can now see those boards. So what I'm going to do is just make it a bit bigger, and we're going to start off with Martin Walker against Keith Arkle. Okay. That is what you see.
I'm actually seeing the under.
You're actually seeing the different one. Let me just reshare. Let me reshare that. That one there. That's better, isn't it?
That is better, and it's bigger as well. That's great.
It's bigger and better. Okay, so Martin Walker against Keith Arkle. Now, Keith, of course, is a new world champion from just a few days ago, where he took part in the World Over 50s teams event and the English Over 50s one. So he'll be on a high coming into this match.
He will indeed, yes, and it's impressive. I think these teams have really gone out to really deliver the best sides they can for this final. It's very exciting how many strong players are lined up to appear today.
Yes, I'm just going to check out this arrow system because I don't know if these arrows relate to the particular game, so whether I can get it. I don't think they do. All right, but if I double click on the game, we can just go right into that game.
Yes.
Oh, no, it's too big.
Now rather big, yeah.
Here we go. Okay, let's do it like this.
So, well, this is Keith doing his I don't really like opening theory, I just like to get a position sort of stuff. But of course, that's harder to do with the black pieces. You've got to make sure you kind of negotiate, navigate, and survive the initial stages first. So he's doing these. You see these from time to time, sort of mixture of the Caracan and the modern, where black's happy to. But we had one the other day when we were commentating it, and black needs to be happy to play those block positions if white chooses to go e5. But I had an interesting thought already after Queen d2 here by white, suggesting that white wants to play an open rather than a block position. Black played Queen a5, which sort of set me thinking just for a moment. I don't mean I wasn't thinking before it set me. I got a bit curious here. What happens if white takes on d5 and tries to win a pawn?
Let's try it. Okay, so take on d5.
Completely silly in thinking that by playing bishop b5 check.
Bishop b5 check.
I then kind of wondered if whatever black plays, apart from king f8, which I assume wasn't the plan, whether white can try to take on d5.
Oh, okay. This is interesting, Peter. Okay.
Just a silly little thought. I just thought, kick off.
Yeah, because takes, obviously black cannot take on b5 because you've got this check.
Black cannot indeed. Well, can, but shouldn't.
Can, but shouldn't. It would be a bad idea. High
I kind of thought the same trick seems to work after bishop d7 as well, because, you know, then the knight, if black played, for example, well, black can take on d2.
Here, yeah?
There's something to be navigated, yeah.
Oh, and you can't play bishop takes bishop because just
no, because queen's on breeze, and you still can't play queen takes. And if you take on d2 and take on b5, I expect white probably would be wise to grab back the bishop rather than the rook. But why is that not feasible?
Something like that. And white has won a pawn.
There might be some counterplay. There might, you know, there's a king, but I certainly think this would have been worth a very good look. And I wonder if Keith had something in mind that I've missed.
Maybe.
But as I was
thinking, steering for Devon here. So Devon is, I'm going to get used to which teams are doing what. So Ocelot is cheering for Devon, which is the minor counties in this.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So Keith is playing for
Devon.
Devon, yes.
As far as I know, he's still living in Torquay, I think.
Okay.
He's been a Devon. He's been eligible for Devon, I guess, for some time now, actually. I don't know if he's played much in the run-up to this, but...
Well, Keith, as I say, he's been playing... He's played, I don't know...
No, I mean, if he's played
Devon, yes. Don't know.
But obviously, that you know, in the finals, people make an extra special effort to get out their best available teams.
Yeah.
And, yeah, this is an interesting... it wasn't obvious to me.
So this is... So we think that... So after Queen A5,
well, so it's at least worth a good look by white, and
yeah.
But he passed up the moment and blocked the centre with E5 anyway.
E5 he played, and Keith played H5.
That's the move I would expect, because black wants to play this knight H6 to F5 manoeuvre that we saw in a game the other day, I believe, and. Yeah, that move makes perfect sense, particularly with Queen D2 on the board. Black doesn't have the option of going Knight H6 first, so it obviously makes sense to play H5, preparing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, a curious start, interesting moment, but...
And Martin Walker now castles along.
Am I right in recalling that Martin Walker is a player with sort of... I think I'm thinking of the right, but with sort of clock handling not dissimilar to my own, a real...
Oh, really? Okay.
So we might have a time trouble, Devotee, and if that's right, then, well, he's putting the moves on the board quite quickly at the moment, but actually, E takes D5 probably would have been worth a slightly extended look.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's see. No, I'm hoping I can just click on there and it gives me the next. Oh, yes, it does. It gives me the next.
One thing we can say for sure is that Jack Rudd is not a player with time consumption similar to my own. He's
probably very, very fast.
Famous for being perhaps the fastest player at, when playing classical chess in the country, I would think.
Yeah.
Playing Jack Rudd, you have to psych yourself up for the fact that you're very likely to be in time pressure. Well, somebody like me is very likely to be in time pressure from earlier on than usual. Yeah, and of course, it sort of cuts both ways. Jack's got an incredibly good feel of positions, but sometimes if you're playing at that speed, calculation-wise, you miss something.
Okay, so Jack's playing for Devon.
Yep.
And Clive for Norfolk then. And this match is being played in Knaphill, Woking.
Okay,
so an intermediate venue.
That seems like that's probably quite an appropriate neutral venue for Devon and Norfolk.
Yes. Okay, so Jack's white here, D4, knight f6, C4, G6.
Jack, I've certainly had King's Indians as white against Jack, so he's played the black side of these as well a few times. So.
Yeah. Okay.
This is
Averbach, is it?
Yeah, this is Averbach. This is now sadly the late Yuri Averbach.
Oh. C5, D5.
Who I learned a lot about when I was writing an article about him for chess moves the last couple of months. I started off with a sort of just a fairly minimal knowledge of the guy, but I learned his life was fascinating and his achievements were greater even than I'd realised. So.
He's musician as well, right?
No, that's Taimanov.
Ah,
who I think married Averbach's daughter. So I don't know. Well, exactly. Yeah.
So what was Averbach? What else did he do apart from chess?
Well, I mean, obviously, he was a stronger player than I'd realised in the 1950s. Then he was obviously he did all this endgame work, which produced this amazing series of endgame books. That was the main thing I knew about him before I started. But he was also quite a serious kind of political figure within the Federation in the 1970s.
Okay.
And so sort of, as I said in the article, to be a figure in sort of the Soviet chess establishment in the 1970s, but to sort of emerge from it with everybody speaking highly of you and liking you is quite an impressive and unusual thing to do, actually. Because, many of those people got tainted with some not particularly pretty stories towards the end of the 70s and stuff. But he seems to have emerged with basically everyone having only good things to say about him.
Very good.
And, of course, he lived to 100, which is no mean feat.
Okay, so Clive's he's just played e6.
Yeah, so these lead to kind of Benoni type positions, but I guess, okay, black might prefer not to have played h6 if he'd had the choice, and white, I say Benoni type positions. The truth is that if you play it in a Benoni type way with white, then your e-pawn probably becomes a bit tricky to defend, given that you have to move your king's knight somewhere. So white tends to play e takes d5 more than c takes after the exchange on d5, so that there's no e-pawn to defend. So something like queen d2 now I think is normal. Black will. Is that what happened?
No, I'm just.
No, that's just
putting your move on the
and
board.
then I guess black has to.
King h7.
I'm a bit hazy on the theory of all this, but yeah, I guess that white needs to find a way to develop the king's knight, probably without allowing knight g4 at the wrong moment, because white clearly desperately wants to keep hold of his dark square bishop.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that knight f3 probably means that white actually played knight f3.
Ah, okay. I hope it means that.
E takes d5.
Yes. Is the main line.
Can I promote it? Make main line. Let's make that the main line. Yeah.
So we need to be careful if we make suggestions; they might suddenly become.
Yeah, they might appear on the board. The players
alternative reality.
Yeah. So c takes.
He's gone c takes. Okay, so I suppose if you play this move order, it gives you time to play knight d2. So you do have the option of going Benoni wise.
Oh, right. So what, like knight here and then come into...
Well, I think if black played, for example, rook e8, white pretty much... The only convenient defense of e4 feels like something like knight d2.
So I'm going to put it on. I'm just doing this one. Yeah. Okay, that's not really what's played. This has been played.
Yeah.
So maybe I delete from here. Yes. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, but I guess that black could also, other ways black can consider playing these type of positions is to try and exchange a pair of minor pieces, so maybe bishop g4, because if you take that knight off the board, it helps to control the e5 square, which is obviously white's main kind of break in this opening. The way to try and get play is a timely e5. Also, I guess black can, I guess black can't look at knight g4 immediately, because bishop f4 and then d6 would need defending. But, white needs to find a way of... Probably white's going to go knight d2 next and cut out all the knight g4 ideas as well.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I think in this Averbach, it seems to be slightly unusual to take with the c-pawn, but it may be that this is old-fashioned theory or poor memory talking, and this may be perfectly right. I'm just trying to think, if I had this position with white in the Benoni, I wouldn't put my bishop on e3. But on the other hand, it's also encouraged black to play h6, which may or may not be ideal. So,
yeah.
Of course, black also plays g5 sometimes in the Benoni to try and control the f4 square. So, if white hasn't castled, you might be able to make use of h6. But all those things have plus points, but they come out with some risk as well. So
yeah.
That's sort of true of most moves in chess openings. There's you can make a case for them, but you have to assess the risks at the same time. Okay, so this is teeing up to be quite an interesting battle. Of course, black's plan in the Benoni is to push the pawns forward on the queen side as a sort of plan A, and if not, then ways of chipping away at the centre with sometimes f5, that kind of thing, if you can move the knight. There's it's one of those openings where the plans are very much defined by the pawn structure. In fact, if I had to sort of pick an archetypal opening where the plans are defined by the pawn structure, I'd probably go for the Benoni. It's sort of so clear what both sides are trying to do after a few moves, usually. Okay, let's take a
see the next one. So Ken McEwen against Joss Haynes. So we've got another D4 opening. Knight F6, Knight F3, and E6.
London system-y.
London system-y.
Yes, there we go. London system.
There we go. Yes.
London. Very popular. Gets a very hard time on social media, but is actually a pretty sensible and sound way of starting the game, especially if you don't want to be bogged down by lots of theory.
So just played C5. King in the centre. E3. Have you got a favourite defence against the London system, Peter?
If I did have, do you think I'd tell you on air, Natasha? Right. I actually played my most recent game of chess was against the London system, and I won rather quickly, to my surprise, as much as anyone else's, I think. Okay, what I tend myself to, if I think people are going to play the London system, and given that my repertoire allows it, I tend to try and play D5 without playing E6, because I actually like to have possibilities for my Queen's Bishop to develop when I'm playing in the London system. And I like to play a quick D5 and C5 and still have options with that bishop. So I tended not to analyse the E6 stuff very deeply, although I realise it's sort of completely sound and plenty of very strong players do it. But I don't know. I sort of those positions where the bishop is stuck on C8 and white's is on D3 and everything else is fairly much in equilibrium. I'm sure they're fine for black, but they're not exactly my taste, I must say.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have a London system recipe for yourself?
D5, C3. So it is quite solid here for white.
It's super solid, yeah. And I think in recent times people have found that there are more kind of tricks and quirks to give white's play a bit of life than they used to think. It's definitely, the opening is unpopular in some quarters, but perhaps more because black finds it irritating to play against them because it's actually very boring. I think this position, it's easy to give it plenty of life.
So 92, bishop D6 here. And white drop back. And
yes, taking on D6, I think, eases black's problems and makes it easier for him to look at being able to play moves like E5. If you put the bishop back on G3, you're always giving black some decision to make. If black takes on G3, then there'll be a bit open H file to think about if you're castling on the king side. And if and then white can also always spring a moment where, for example, here if black played Queen C7 trying to be non-committal, no need to put it on the board. But I guess that white could play D takes C5 and then suddenly the recapture is pinned.
Oh yes,
little things.
Take on D3 and you don't get to.
So I think on the whole E7 might be a better square for the queen, but there are little quirks in each of these lines which just means that there's a little bit more bite to it than I think people sometimes used to think, at least.
So just
solve these problems by just take, and I'm sure that black can cope with this open H file fine, but it's something for white to potentially work with.
Yeah, takes.
On the other hand, white needs to think about where he's going to put his king as well, because if he wants to castle, castling king side is safe enough now, but then you lose the benefit of the open H file. Castling queen side might lead, there are situations where black could start an attack by playing C4, B5, B4, that sort of thing. So white's king position is an interesting.
I guess black is kind of lining up to do E5 already.
May well be, yeah. That's certainly one way of trying to, those things are more effective if people are starting to commit to something on the king side. The old classical. An attack on the wing, you answer with a blow in the center. But it's true because once people are committed to things, then moves in the center, which might be quite normal, acquire a lot more force. E5 in a position like this, you're likely to reach a position where it feels a little bit like black is playing white and white is playing black. But nothing more drastic than that. And, white will find a way of making it. The extra tempo should always mean that things are more comfortable for the defense, as it were, if white ends up playing black. But you're right, E5 is very much on the table here. And then, of course, that solves the problem of that C8 bishop in another way.
Yeah.
Yep, so the question here is white bothered about E5? If you were bothered about E5, you might look at bishop B5. There might be situations where you could even look at knight E5, although the two.
Okay, maybe, yeah, 95, and just sort of.
Well, if black takes knight d7, but does white really want to play f4? I'm not sure. Sometimes white plays f4, but not always with the double g pawns as well. I mean, it's just quite a rich position, isn't it? There's actually, in some ways it feels simplified. In other ways, there's still a lot going on.
Yeah.
But queen e7 makes sense to me because it also keeps us guessing whether black's going to castle. Or I mean, it's not absolutely impossible for black to castle queenside either. So.
Yeah. Yeah, or like bishop d7, castle long, and.
So have you played either of these?
I think he'll go kingside, but we'll see.
We'll see. Do you know either? Have you played either of these players?
See, I'm sure that I have the names. I know the names.
Yeah, the names are familiar, but I can't remember concretely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next one, Jonathan Underwood against Gerald Moore.
Gerald Moore, I've certainly played.
Gerald Moore, I've certainly played as well. Yeah.
2 or 3 times, I think, including one game where I remember getting absolutely less than nothing with white in relatively recent times. And I think one more successful one, but that one I still remember. I always remember the ones that didn't go well more vividly, I think.
Do you? I kind of wipe them out of my memory.
No, I'm not very good at that. That would be nice. You must teach me how to do that. Okay.
c4, knight f6, knight c3, and d5.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is something for... Well, this must be a line for people who want to play some version of the Grunfeld.
Yeah.
And, there are lots of ways of doing... People often go g6 or c5 first and then go d5 after, say, knight f3. This is a very direct way. I mean, it gives white, obviously, options of playing in a Grunfeld type way, making it like a mainline Grunfeld, or, of course, playing with g3 as after taking on. But takes, and then white will either play in the center or play g3, depending on his...
Yeah. So here, white can play e4, can't he?
White can play e4. I think if white plays e4 now... And this is a bit off the top of my head. I haven't thought much about, but in this position, I guess, as well as taking on c3, which is always an option, when if white plays b takes c3, probably black will go g6 and we'll get a proper, pure exchange Grunfeld. But I guess after e4, can black also play knight b4, intending to meet d4 with queen takes d4? And I think that is... I think knight b4 there might be...
So here we go. So e4, knight b4.
Yeah.
Threatening to come in on d3.
Threatening to come in on d3.
Oh, and this old trick. So the trick is like if d4, then the queen takes.
Yeah, there was nothing original about my trick, but it is...
Yeah, I know this one. I've had people try it on me. I don't usually fall for it, though. So this is the trick.
I think you'd only fall for it once, Natasha.
Yeah. There we go.
Falling for it. You have to ask questions.
But you don't fall for that. You can avoid that.
No, you don't fall for that. But then it might be because there's a very similar version with the black pawn on c5 and white's knight on f3. And then so coming, before e4, white plays knight f3 and black plays c5 or something.
Yeah.
Then e4, knight b4. Very similar thing happens.
Yeah.
And then white, there are lines where black actually gets... For example, white sometimes plays bishop c4, knight d3 check, king e2, and just...
I get these on them.
Yeah, well, it's quite a fun line, but yeah, knight f3, c5, bishop c4. I think this is the line. And then if knight d3, king e2 is at least quite interesting.
King e2. Oh, is this what you do?
White sort of sacrifices king position after maybe knight c1 or knight f4 check are both possible. This is sort of crazy stuff. And I remember I'm not sure about what I think about knight f4 check, but yes, maybe. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the sort of main theoretical version, but something like this. And well, as you can see, it's anything but dull.
Yeah.
White's got development. Black sometimes gets a bit of a grip on the d4 square. I remember some lines where black gets such a grip on the d4 square that white just goes b4 to send that c pawn out of the way and White's trying to mobilize very quickly, and it's quite a lot of fun. But who it's most fun for, you'd have to look up the latest theory.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where both players need to be very well prepared. But I think after knight f3, black did things more simply.
Yes. So white went knight f3 first of all.
I mean, there's no need to look at any of that if you're, I suppose, well, actually, that's not quite true. So after g6,
Yeah.
Now, many people here will have played e4, and after knight takes c3, just take them with the b pawn and get a normal kind of exchange Grunfeld. So e4 takes bishop g7, d4, and so on. Another move here is, well, there were various moves trying to do things quickly to black. Queen b3, queen c2. But another thing, after e4, knight takes, there's also this ending with d takes and queen takes d1. Queen takes. And this, this isn't everybody's taste with black, which is one of the reasons that knight b4 move was quite popular. But of course, it's not everyone's taste with white either. As far as I remember, one of the main ideas for black here is actually not necessarily to go ahead with the fianchetto. I think they play f6 and e5 and just try and equalize things in the center. It's all a bit, it's all a bit odd. Yeah. And the other thing, which I've done myself sometimes after knight f3, g6, is to play h4.
Okay, what here?
Yeah, I've done this a few times. You've got all these h4s these days, and it seems to me that the one where you've already dragged the knight away from f6,
that makes sense.
It must be the most logical in principle.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in practice, it didn't always work out like the logic doesn't always work out very smoothly. But in principle, this seems to me like a good idea, and this has actually appeared at the highest levels as well, or high levels as well. So, but I had a bit of a mixed time with this. I had some good things and some not so good things happen here. It never seemed to go as smoothly as I felt it ought to in some sense. Anyway, these are all fun lines, but I think white went for queen c2, which is...
Yes, that's right. So Jonathan Wood played queen c2. So if the knight takes, white has the option to just retake with the queen.
Yeah, probably quite an interesting option, given that black then has to play f6 or rook, so you can't play bishop g7. So.
Yeah. So Gerald War, he plays bishop g7 straight away.
Yes, and I guess one idea white has here is given that white plays e4, which I don't think is the only way to do it, but given that that's what he does, I assume that his idea must be to take with the d pawn and play that structure, but without allowing the exchange of queens. At least that seems kind of logical to me. So
so take.
I think that's probably his idea. But that didn't happen. But black possibly didn't like that idea and therefore retreated instead.
Back.
But most of these Grunfelds where black retreats are a little bit better for white because white sort of plays d4 and h3 and prevents his center from being attacked in the usual ways. But with queen c2 knight b6 looks quite a decent move to me. I think I'm with Gerald on this one and makes sense to me because now if black had two moves now, they'd go knight c6 and bishop g4, and already white's d4 square looks quite shaky. So I think white needs to demonstrate why this works, and d4.
So won't put d4 straight away.
Yeah, I think this feels to me almost. I'd almost go as far as to say if you can't play d4 here, you probably shouldn't go e4 last move. This feels like sort of almost like a necessary natural follow-up. So it's, I suppose in theory it's a pawn sack, although that would be very
So black could in theory play bishop takes d4, but it doesn't.
Yeah, but rather you than me.
You have to be brave. Yeah, you wouldn't.
Well, I think that I don't know whether white takes that, or I mean, it seems to me just off the top of my head that a move like bishop h6 is scary too, stopping black castling, stop the bishop retreating, threaten castles long. I mean, what more do you want?
Yeah.
I don't think that looks very appealing for black. So in that case, white's system is quite viable. It makes sense.
Yeah. So black castled, and then white just defended the d pawn now with bishop e3.
And now I think, well, I don't know whether if black plays bishop g4, it may be that white can play knight e5 by virtue of the fact that the queen's on c2, so the knight's not pinned. I'm not sure if that wasn't true, then a bishop g4 looks like a very logical way to attack the center. But if that's true, it may be an issue. At least it might well give black pause for thought before playing it. I mean, it's sort of similar to a lot of positions I know a bit about, but it's sufficiently different that it's definitely got its own interesting quirks. It's worth mentioning that the open match will have started as well now. I don't know whether we want to.
Yeah, we'll drop in there in a moment. Yeah.
Maybe a very quick look at 5 and 6 here and then.
Yeah. Okay, and so knight c6 was played, and that's where they're up to on board 4. Okay, and let's see Stephen Orton against Graham Bolt. So we have e4 from Stephen. G6, d4, Bishop G7. I've definitely played Stephen Orton before.
Really? I was thinking
way back. Like, didn't he play in
played Graham Bolt, but not
like Ipswich and places? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Bury St Edmunds, probably.
Of course, if I say I haven't played someone who it turns out I have played,
I've probably played everyone in the whole thing. Yes. That's what always turns out. I've played everyone. D6 and F4 from Stephen.
Okay, so we've got a proper modern here without any of the. Oh wow, that's. Let me just try and remember. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the recommended ways to do this. So, I'm really reasonably familiar with the normal Peert's position after knight f3, knight f6 is on the board, and then c5 is a major option. But how this? So if white takes on c5 now?
Yeah, he did actually.
I assume that black wants queen a5 to be working. Because that structure with d takes, where the bishop can get blotted out with e5, that's almost always worth avoiding for black. So queen a5 needs to work. And now, I don't know, is this... trying to remember if I know any theory on this position or just... Because there were some similar positions where black's queen needs to be a little bit careful. So what did white do? Bishop
d2.
Yeah, bishop d2... by the way, c takes d6 doesn't look ridiculous to me either, because black's going to have to...
Oh, just right here, like c takes d6.
I mean, I'd certainly... As black, I'd want
to
you've got to look at
something good here.
Yeah, takes bishop d2, just making sure you don't lose a rook. And then, well, I don't know. Again, without the g7 bishop and with white developing quite quickly, I suspect even if we don't grab pawns, there's some decent compensation.
It's good for white, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if it was actually good for white, I'm trying to remember what the kind of most recommended recipe is after such an early f4, and I've got a feeling... Yeah, no, it's definitely not c5 so early. I think this is probably a little bit risky. But also what he played, bishop d2, and then black takes on c5. Yeah. And one thing black always needs to make sure isn't super dangerous in these positions is knight to d5.
Okay, so knight d5 here.
Oh, in this position, there's a square on the queen's got a square on d4 if you can... Yeah, possibly any... No, I was thinking in response to something like b4 or something. The queen could come to d4 because she's hitting the rook.
Yeah.
But bishop b4 might be a threat. Because queen c6 always loses to bishop b5. With a nice... We're getting a lot of forks on c7 and c2.
That's happening all the time.
Yeah, it's the only trick I know. You're going to get a lot of it this afternoon. That looks a little bit like black would need to know what they're doing. I'm thinking here whether black, takes on b2 and meets bishop b4 with queen takes, Ray Keane style. There was a great game from the 1970s where I think Ray just gave his queen for two minor pieces and just got on with it. Queen, 2 minor pieces and some dark squares for the queen. But I'm sort of joking. I suspect rook b1 is very strong in this position. But actually, bishop b4 queen takes might not be as bad as... Oh, no, there's a queen d4 at the end. The computer will laugh at all this anyway. Okay, that was just silly. But, so that might... knight d5 is always worth looking with white in this position. It may be that here, with the rook, with queen d4 possible after b4, it may be that black has enough resources. But it's a bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having possibilities like that so early in the game.
Hi, Sonia. This one we're looking at is the minor counties, so it's Devon against Norfolk.
Yes. Somerset against Devon. That would be a local derby almost, wouldn't it? I don't think we've... I think the Yorkshire Northumberland is the closest we have to a local derby, probably.
Yes, so that one's... Northumberland Yorkshire is the counties championship.
Yes, that is.
Yes, we're going to drop in on that one in a moment.
It's rare to see Yorkshire playing the role of the southerner.
Okay.
So a few more moves on here. Knight f3. Yeah, I think knight d5 is quite critical and worth a look. But of course, it may be that if you've looked at it, it's not as good as it looks at first sight. There may be things black can do there. Knight f3, knight f6, I think is necessary. Knight d5 is really a threat after knight f3.
Yeah.
Bishop d3.
d3. So Stephen develops.
Queen e2. This now looks like this is much closer to a mainline Austrian attack pitch with c5, d takes c5. I mean, it really could easily be very close to heavy theory now. White needs queen e2 to play bishop e3 in order to I think White's playing queen e2 to castle short rather than long, sort of slightly unusually.
Yeah.
You sort of see it as a preparation for castling long sometimes. I think here he needs it in order to kick the queen away first. Bishop g4 is what I would do for black, and that's an interesting... This is sort of close to what Simon Williams... did he christen it as the Dragadorf, or was it already the Dragadorf? But, the combination of dragon and Najdorf, which Simon Williams briefly espoused some years ago. This look, I mean, because all these, once the d pawn's exchanged for the c pawn, it all looks a bit like a Sicilian anyway, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's very Sicilian-y. Okay, so... And black and white got on with his bishop e3 and castles.
Queen a5, and as you predicted, short castles.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't know if knight g4 can be an irritant somewhere around here. Maybe knight c6. I mean, as black in these positions, I used to think, when I used to play the pits when I was much younger, I was kind of in favour of going bishop g4, getting rid of that knight and trying to play against the d4 square and stuff, but I'm not so sure anymore. I think there are different ways black can develop, but I'm not entirely sure that a6 is what theory recommends. But it's only if the b6 square or something becomes a weakness that you might need to worry. Okay, that's all very sensible. And
that's where we're at.
Yeah, very quick look at board 6, and we'll head to the main.
Yeah. Okay, so Alan Brucey against Roy Hughes. I'm going to claim I've played both of these players, but I wouldn't put money on it. Takes. Okay. So
Scandinavian. Okay.
Knight f3, knight f6.
Yeah, I've got some sympathy with these lines where white tries not to go knight c3, because whenever you're playing white in the Scandinavian, what justifies black's position a lot of the time is that the knight actually doesn't really want to be on c3. You want to have your c pawn able to move. So black loses some tempi, and white's knight ends up on a square it doesn't always exactly want to be on. If white can evict the queen by playing c4, that would be quite nice in a way. But I think there are some reasons why it's not quite as simple as that. But that's
this is what white is doing. Yeah, c4.
That's the theory behind what white's trying to do, and I'm very in sympathy with the idea. I don't know whether it can be made to work exactly, but
knight c3.
After queen d8, I suspect it can be made to work reasonably well. But on the other hand, there are other, maybe more critical ways to play with white against queen d8. So, yeah, that's the other thing. If you don't hit the queen immediately, she can decide where to go according to other things that have happened already, I guess. Bishop g4 makes sense to me as well. I don't.
Bishop e2.
Yep. And e6. Yep.
h3. Bishop back and castles.
This is all very sensible stuff.
Yeah, it just seems like quite normal moves by white.
Bishop d6 rather than bishop e7 makes me wonder if white can consider pinning with bishop g5. But I'm not making any great claim for it. It's just something I would consider if I was white. This move encourages perhaps... that's interesting. Actually, I think it doesn't maybe... So what happens if black were to take on e5 and d1?
Okay, so take on e5.
Yeah.
You have white has the choice of which bishop to...
Well, I think if he takes h5, we're taking a pawn on d4.
So
yeah, okay. White needs to take... But I think this is a mistake by black. I just wanted to quickly say why I think it is. I think when we take... If black now takes on d1, we take with the bishop.
Yeah.
And after bishop takes, we can play e takes f6.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be rather embarrassed by... And, at first glance, I thought maybe, we can just play rook g8 and take back the pawn. But I think with the black start square bishop gone, white's going to be able to play bishop h6 and threaten knight e4 and all kinds of nasty things.
Yeah.
And actually, the bishop might be able to stop knight e4 by going to c2. But basically, I think this is not a good position for black.
Yeah.
And probably a bit of a...
Yeah, knight e4 is coming in, isn't it? And...
Yeah, I think bishop c2 might have lasted a bit longer, but it doesn't look like a good development for black at all. No, so
yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Kenworthy 39, not Gary
Not Gary.
Kenworthy. Hope you're well today. Okay, so we got, so we're here. So black didn't take on e5
No,
just
indeed.
because of that
Quite
line,
right.
and so
From
takes,
equal.
takes.
Okay.
Castles.
And bishop g5. Okay.
Yeah. b7.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that you may need to go back in that case, because obviously then black can't play sort of knight d7 or something, because, well, can, but white could double the pawns with knight takes d7 and bishop takes f6 and probably be a little better.
So this is where we're at.
Okay.
It looks fine for white, but it looks fine for both players, really, doesn't it?
I think it does, although I think it does look okay for black, but it feels like he's sort of a tempo short or so of being completely comfortable. Also, rook e8, the fact that it means that white might be able to think about the f7 square sometimes. I don't think you can do that. I was briefly wondering if you have some rook e1 and knight takes f7 sort of Aliekin style or something, and I don't think you do, but because you usually will need a white squared bishop to follow up on that. So I think
sorry, Kenworthy 39. I'm going to put the name. I just make us a bit bigger, and then our names come on. It's Grandmaster Peter
fine
Wells.
gentleman. Thank you. I haven't been called a fine gentleman for probably ever actually.
Okay. All right. So that's where we're at in this match. We're going to hop across next to the championship.
Yes.
Which is here. If I refresh that page, the moves should start coming through. Yes. So this game started half an hour later. It's started at 2 o'clock. And if I just click into this first one here, you can see the lineup. Very exciting lineup on board one is International Master Richard Palliser against Grandmaster Danny Gormally. So let's see.
Everything I said about the teams bringing out their best players in the final. Because these guys played in another competition earlier this year, and Northumberland won, I think. And Yorkshire, both teams have strengthened, I think, since that match. But Yorkshire, in particular, have gone to some lengths to bring out all their top players. I mean, I know this is nice for me because I know many of these Yorkshire players pretty well, because a lot of them are White Rose.
So Danny Gormally Northumberland, Richard Palliser is Yorkshire in this particular game.
I think when they played back in April that Paul Townsend was probably on board 1 or 2, whereas now he's on board 5 or 6, I think.
Okay.
That's a fairly good gauge of quite how powerful this team is today.
Yeah, well, both sides. I mean, both.
I'm still seeing the match we were on. Is that?
Sorry, can you see here? We're on. Are you seeing?
I'm still seeing the games we were just looking at.
You're still seeing the old games. Sorry. Let me just reshare that. That one. So share. Okay. So it's this one. There you go. That's better, isn't it?
Cool. I'm still not seeing that, actually.
Oh, are you not? Let me just try again.
I assume
let's see if I did that one.
Have you unshared? Oh, yeah, that's now got
that's the wrong one there. Got too many. There you go. That should be the right one now. There we go.
Struggling a little bit. Okay, so this is Richard Palliser against Danny Gormally.
Yes. Now, Kenworthy is saying Danny played in Blackpool a few weeks back.
Indeed, he did.
3 winners.
3 winners.
Who won Blackpool?
Sorry?
Who won Blackpool a few weeks back? Kenworthy will tell us. Kenworthy 39 will tell us all the winners of Blackpool a few weeks ago. So Danny's been playing quite a lot, hasn't he? Because he was playing that, and then he played 4 in CL, I think.
And Danny's been pretty active.
Yes.
And I think he's been working harder on his chess in the last year or so than he probably has done for many years, and with a bit more enthusiasm, I think. I mean, he still tweets critically about chess on occasions, but he does seem quite motivated these days.
Well, he wrote his book, didn't he? The
He's
Pandemic
written several books.
Pandemic
He's had
Shark,
his zone, and then
which I've bought but not yet read. I've got a bit of a backlog on books at the moment.
I tried to swap him my book for the Comfort Zone, but he was, as somebody helpfully pointed out on Twitter, completely out of the Comfort Zone. He had no copies left. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay, so Richard's played c4 and Danny c6.
Okay, so this is a declaration that you're happy to play a Slav or a Karakan, probably. If white plays e4, you end up with here we go.
Which he does.
Kind of Panov attack in the Karakan.
Yep. So takes, e takes, and knight f6.
Oh, there's an advert for the Blackpool Congress. Does that also tell us who won?
Yes. I really like the Blackpool Congress, though. It's very. I didn't manage to play there this year, but
I hadn't played it for years, but I did actually win it in 2017, I think.
Very good.
I even managed to play a nice game in one of the rounds.
Very good.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not quite sure if I've won a tournament since. Oh, maybe yes, I have won a tournament since then, but not many. Okay, Queen A4 check. This is interesting. So yeah, this is an interesting line where white tries to make use of the fact that he's played c4 rather than d4. So this gives white the choice of taking on d5, and when black plays knight f6, trying to find some way to hang on to the pawn, or at least to gain some concessions by black in winning it back. So
no, I mean, just in terms of opening prep, the players would have known the players that they were likely to come up against, but they wouldn't have known the exact fixtures in advance.
Probably know the exact, and I don't know. It's a question of whether the teams are going to be able to get all their top people out.
Yeah,
I guess you have to make a guess about that. Yeah, I suspect that both players knew that if the other team fielded their very strongest side, then this is probably who they'd get. But more than that, no, I don't know. I mean, this is a line which I thought was relatively harmless for black these days.
Okay.
I think black tends to play knight bd7. I was about to say. Yeah. There it is.
Thanks
and
for
after
the
knight c3, after knight c3, black can either play with g6, or they can try to play a quick a6 and b5, which obviously, to do that, they need to deal with the pin.
Yeah, that's a good point. They also didn't know whether they were going to be white or black today. So
they didn't know the colours either.
So
yeah.
always, in the old days, when I used to play county chess, it always used to be done by tossing a coin at the start. So I wonder if that's still the tradition. I guess it probably is.
Oh, that's interesting. It may well be. Yeah, I remember that as well. I remember.
Yeah, and certain captains were very good. They'd win the coin toss each time.
Is this how you assess a captain?
They were terrible.
You assess a captain by their abilities in the coin toss.
Well, it's one of the useful skills,
Well, indeed, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
G6. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think as white, I was more concerned about the other lines, the ones where black tries to play, but the detail of them is a bit hazy. But I think black plays a6 and somehow would be a6. But g6. Okay, this is very logical. And now.
Well, Sonia says Sussex traditionally lose the toss. Yeah.
It's important to have these traditions.
Bishop g7.
So there's various things white can do here. One of them is, I think, to try and give, to not come off worse, to not end up with an isolated queen's pawn. White sometimes flicks the move d6 in, so that it will be taken by a pawn, and then there's sort of an IQP on both sides. That's one possibility. Not here.
Hi, Kevin Winter. Hope you're well.
But the exact details of this position have gone hazy on me. I mean, I think I must have written about it in my Karakan book, but that feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of where they're at the moment. So white could try this disruptive d6 move, or alternatively, if I can get rid of
another thing is to try to hang on to the d5 pawn, some bishop c4 and maybe d3. But I think when I was talking about a6 and b5, I might have been confusing lines actually, because there's also bishop b5 check, which is another attempt to make it more difficult to win back the d5 pawn, and has some that might be the one where a6 was more serious.
Yeah. So we might see Richard just trying to hang on to that pawn for dear life and
Yeah, so what we're saying is the two main options, he hangs on to it for dear life or he just gives it away.
gives it back. Yeah.
So really, we're not taking too much of a risk in that prediction, are we?
Well, he could. What could he do?
He could just sort of give it away without moving.
Try quite hard, but not really.
Yeah, exactly. That's the middle ground.
Sort of fairly half-heartedly.
Now we've covered every possibility. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is, but I think this is, a reasonably. It's got there's imbalance in the position, which is kind of what you want for an interesting tussle. So
yeah. Okay, let's see David Eggleston against Andrew Ledger.
Aha. Interesting outing.
I've got to just allow Lawrence's comment that the mod was not allowing it. As a captain, Lawrence is claiming he claims not to have been a prolific tosser.
Yeah, the mod's doing its job there, Natasha. I think on balance that comment deserves to be out there.
He's got it. We've got it. We've got Loz. Okay. And Kevin's asking if you can play the Caro-Kann to win. The Korchnoi variation with an early h5. I'm sure you can try.
I mean, yes, you can.
We can answer that question with this game because we have.
Well, you honestly can. Because I think there's an argument now that some of the sort of sharp Sicilians and stuff have become so theoretical, and some of those very theoretical positions tend to involve, there will be some forced draws and things out there. And there's, I know at least one very strong player who I won't name here, but they used to kind of have a sharp Sicilian. But when they needed to go all out for a win, they would play the Caro-Kann on the basis that it avoided all these short draws.
Interesting.
And it seems a bit paradoxical, and it's good advertisement for the Caro-Kann, of course. But there is a degree, and of course, there's also White. White is playing for a win too, and there's an awful lot of Caro-Kanns end up with sort of sharp, advanced variations and stuff these days, and there's plenty of imbalance and fight in those. So yes, you can play the Caro-Kann for a win, but I think most openings. It's quite tough if White's really determined to suck the life out of a position and end up with a drawish position. It's difficult with most openings to completely avoid that, and you just need the sort of good technique and ability to grind people, which will make them very reluctant to go down that road in the first place. And I think the Caro-Kann is probably as good as anything else for that purpose. So yes, you can, but I can see what motivates the question. There are some quiet lines.
Well, here, David, I like the line David's playing here. It's quite an enterprising line. E5, doing so advanced, and then H4.
Yeah, H4 I quite like. The first idea is that Black can't go E6 because the bishop gets trapped immediately with G4. So that's the
So
first thing. It's imperative.
Let's show this one.
Yeah.
So here,
you can try going to E4, but that gets met.
You can go into there, can't you?
Yep. F3.
F3, but it's going to run out of squares. So there we go.
And goodbye, bishop.
Trapped.
So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that the really subtle point about H4 is that there are systems where White goes immediately C4 here without H4. But one of the ideas of H4 is that if Black plays H5, you get a better version of that. Because when you're battling for the D5 square and Black plays kind of knight E7 battling for the D5 square, White will have the move bishop G5, pinning that knight.
Okay, and so with H4
the
and H5
can't be kicked away with H6 means that bishop on C1 gets to play a much more direct role fighting for the key square in the center. That's the subtle second tier of this.
Actually, I think we're going to see some of that because H4 we had H4, H5, and then C4.
I had this against Nepo, by the way, and I played H6. I did, yes.
Wow.
I had this position against Nepo and played H6, but at the time I thought H6. Then the White's got a very sharp line where they play G4, and if the bishop goes back to H7, they play E6. And at the time, I now think incorrectly. I thought that line I'd found a way to play for Black, which was okay, but I was actually quite lucky that Nepo didn't go for that. I think it was quite scary.
E6, knight C3, knight E7.
Yeah, and knight E2. Yeah, this all looks like the main stuff.
Now we get this bishop g5.
I mean, I think lots of h4 became quite popular because there were some really interesting lines after h6 as well. Sorry, yeah, there were lots of interesting lines here and other ways to play as well. And okay, I think Gawain has been on the white side of this quite a few times as well.
Okay, interesting.
I expect that both players will know their stuff reasonably well here.
Yeah,
they're both.
We do have clock times, don't we? Yes. So David's they've put actually 2 hours. What time control is it? They must have gained time on the clock, both players.
Well, unless they start off unless this is the only tournament these days where you have kind of really old-fashioned time controls with a full 2 hours for the 40 moves.
Maybe it's true. Thanks for the follow, Skulking.
I don't even know if they have increment. I should have checked that out. I don't know whether it's a sort of traditional time control with 2 hours for 40 moves or whether it's some kind of...
Thank you. 2 hours 15 plus 30 seconds.
Sorry, 2 hours 15?
Yeah, 2 hours 15.
I should be playing this. This is luxury.
This is the time control made for you, Peter.
Why
your county should have qualified.
Oh, my counties aren't there. That's
yeah, you do need your county. Unless you're prepared to move counties just to get a time control you like.
I'd move counties for 2 hours 30. I'm 2 hours 15 plus 30. What do you want? I mean, amazing.
Okay, so any county captain out there, Peter Wells is looking
I'm sure
for a county that plays.
My recent form, I'm going to be inundated with offers, I'm sure.
Okay.
Looking at form, I think it's fair to say that both Andrew Ledger and David Eggleston are very strong players who are usually higher rated than they are at the moment. It's a bit... I think Andrew's been playing a lot in the last few years, and he
yes, he works as well, doesn't he?
He does.
He's been multitasking.
Some very interesting job, which he told me all about when we were in where were we? In the Czech Republic together a couple of years ago.
Yes.
No, he's a lovely guy. I'm a huge fan. And Queen B6 this is interesting. So
they're both international masters, right? David Eggleston.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And Andrew's obviously one of a trio of famous chess-playing brothers.
Yes.
I don't think I'd offend the others if I say he's traditionally been the strongest of the three. But
yes. So there's Andrew, David and Steve. But which order? Who's the oldest and all that sort of stuff?
Stephen's the oldest, I think. Yeah. And then David, and then I think Andrew's the younger brother, isn't he?
Hi, Carl Stevens. Hello. At the Dolphin Centre, open section. So this is that must be this match here. Yes, in Darlington. I'm trying to understand that. Yeah. How is it there? What's the is there a lot of tension in the air for this final? Okay.
So Natasha, Rook C1, what does that... Do we understand how that defends the...
Gladstone Wanderer? So it's defending, but what about the B2 pawn?
Well, I was going to say, do we understand how it defends the B2?
Okay, so let's see. So let's just take it off because we can do that.
Because black has an A3 square, because otherwise something with knight A4 and...
Hi, Kingstar. I can see your message.
I can see how this might be.
I have to wave as well. I'm just waving in case you can only see me and not hear me.
It feels to me like this is a pawn sack.
Yeah.
A proper pawn sack. And...
Well, okay. So David... And you can't... There isn't Rook B1 or anything like that because that...
No, there's no Rook B1s, and there's a knight A4, but I don't think that really makes that much sense. I mean, even possibly, Anyway, there's an A3 square, and white can go Rook C3 or something. But with the Rook on C3, I'm not even 100% sure black can't take on A2. So I think white's plan is just to play something. Has Queen B2 hasn't happened, has it? This is just us, or
no, that's just me putting that one on the board.
That's you. Okay, so I mean, his plan might be to play Bishop D3 and just get developed quickly. and have rook b1 in the air. So that's one possibility.
What about like taking on d5?
Yeah, that's also possible. I guess that black probably has to play e takes because c takes knight b5 looks deeply scary. Oh, there's knight takes as well. Knight takes is probably the thing. No, knight takes would be the right thing. I mean, the other thing white can do, of course, is just target black's h5 pawn.
Yeah.
White could, after queen b2, white could
We're
just
looking at queen b2.
The thing about rook c1 is it does defend the knight on c3, and it then enables, and the rook on c1 is defended, so white has the option of bishop d3 as well. So, it's a good, if you are sacking a pawn, it's a good preparation. But, if you play queen b6, there's kind of a kind of implication you might be planning to test this. I don't know.
You would have thought you would at least think about taking this.
I'm sure he'll at least give it some thought. Yes.
Yeah. And so then, okay, but it looks like you can just take it. I suppose white would want to. What about like just bishop b2 castles, and then you're still looking at the h5 pawn?
Yeah, that's one possibility. I think it's either that or bishop d3 and castles, and you're still looking at, and then you've got the extra one. If the bishops are exchanged, once the knight's defended, you might be looking at rook b1. That's a.
I see.
Bishop b2, it might be bishop b2 as well. Either of these is.
Yeah. So these kind of moves.
And one thing you have to look out for is something like bishop d3, and then black taking on c4 and possibly having knight b6 and knight d5 to follow up with. Then what you get in this line quite often is a contest between whether the d5 square for black or the d6 square for white is going to be the more kind of useful.
Yeah.
There's lots of, and bishop e2 looks pretty sensible too. I'm sure there's theory on this, but I'm equally sure I don't know it. But
okay.
It looks quite fun for both players. I mean, it just looks like a very interesting position.
Yeah. So we'll see if Andrew does want to go into this line of taking this.
See whether he really meant queen b6. Of course, queen b6 can also prepare some rook d8. I suspect not castles long in this position, but we'll see.
I mean, you'd think twice, wouldn't you? Against, like, I imagine David's pretty booked up, so you'd
I suppose so. I don't actually know how much David is playing at the moment. I mean, I saw him at the 4NCL playing against White Rose the other day, but I haven't seen him so much recently otherwise. Some players are, Andrew Ledger's been among the players who's played a lot since lockdown. I've been in several tournaments with him, and there are obviously some players who I used to see a lot before lockdown, but haven't seen that much since. And sort of David Eggleston's kind of one of those.
Okay. All right, let's see the next one. So we've got Chris Dunworth against Tim Wall.
This is another all-white rose. This is the all-white rose clash in the match, I think.
Okay.
Both of these players play white rose in 4NCL.
All right. E5. So they'll know each other's play pretty well then if they're regular teammates.
I suppose so. I mean, Tim Wall is one of the players who sometimes plays first team, sometimes plays second team.
Yeah.
But yes, I expect they'll.
Tim's definitely been playing a lot, hasn't he? Because he's been playing all those like Northumberland, like he was organising and playing, wasn't he, in the Northumberland tournaments?
Well, the Northumberland tournament, he's the organiser, and actually, he certainly didn't play last year when I played there.
He's definitely played something recently.
Lovely tournament, incidentally. Really enjoyed last year's Northumberland. It was great.
Yeah. G3, H6.
This is one of those funny lines. So I think, well, I mean, it's clearly a useful move in some situations, stopping white pinning that knight, potentially, that kind of thing. But it's partly trying to get white to kind of declare their hand. So I assume after knight c3, black wants to play bishop b4 type systems. It's just that black can't do those until the knight appears on c3. And it's kind of a semi-waiting move, waiting for knight c3 to go bishop b4. I doubt it can be sort of theoretically the most critical, but it's a sort of interesting practical choice. Prioritizing getting the kind of positions you want over something which, the engine might have analysed for many hours.
Well, Sonia played Tim in the ECF North versus ECF South match in lockdown. That was knight f3, rook e8, castles c6, going for d5, so a3.
That's interesting. I suspect there's other moves white could look at there as well. I mean, I suppose that black actually...
Is black going to drop all the way back? Maybe bishop to f8?
Possibly. I also wondered if black... If black thought white would take with the pawn, they could consider taking on c3 and playing d5. And maybe they can consider that anyway, actually. If bishop takes c3... Now, if pawn takes, then d5 and just pit the pawn center against white's slightly better structure. White's, against white's bishop pair, and not too worried that you're taking away the structure.
Yeah. So then white would have the bishops.
White has the bishops, and I don't think the point is the double pawn. The point is trying to control the center with the... I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, but that feels like the consistent way to follow up c6.
Yeah.
I think if you... but
I'm
also...
going to delete these moves just...
Bishop f8 is quite possible too. That may be... Then I don't know if white can consider trying to get rid of the idea of d5 altogether by playing e4 or something.
E4.
I think if white plays d4, black can play e4 followed by d5 anyway.
Yeah, I was looking at d4. So e4. Okay. And then this knight has to
cover. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe becomes...
Again, it may, this may be possible for white, but because white will have an f3 break or something. But this doesn't look like the easiest way to play it.
No.
But I wonder if white could go e4, because if white can make, after bishop f8, if white can make d5 harder to do, then white can look to play d4 himself and get some kind of, old Indian type structure or something where he has comfortably more space.
Yeah.
The critical question here might be whether black can play d5 anyway.
d5 like that.
Yeah. But that may involve a pawn sack. Can we? No, probably. I don't know. It's really confusing. So if we take twice, I'm wondering if knight takes d5 can be met by knight takes e5. Actually, I was going to go here because is that possible? Oh no, that's not possible. I was trying to do something which loses a piece. Oh, and in this case, black can probably just play this.
Yeah.
And after queen takes, there are no... Oh, wait a minute. No, sorry. Queen takes, there's knight g5. That's a bit of a big one.
The queen takes here, knight g5. Ooh, with the mate threat. Oh, I used to do that as a kid. That threat was my favourite one.
Yeah, no, that's not one you want. I mean, black can play e4 to stay on the board, but it's not going to do a lot of good.
Can't you?
Just take with the horse, and you've still threatening knight f6 check. And
oh, yes, this is all a big trap.
Not good.
Okay, so e4 is possible, and d5 you can't play then.
Well, I don't. D5 looks pretty loose to me. I mean, I don't know if you've got some way of playing it as a pawn sack where you go e4 after white takes twice, but I wouldn't. I don't think as black I would be liable to... Oh, sorry, white could also... Oh, it's complicated. I'm not sure, but it feels loose for black to me. I'm not sure I would want to do. It's possible. It's possible. So it would be taking twice, and then you play e4, and white has to find a square for that knight. But I think it's likely to end up as a pawn sack for black if he does that. No. E4 now. I think the knight g5 trick is a killer. E4 and now. But after knight d4, it's looking like a pawn sack anyway. I don't think this is any good for black.
No. Okay.
So e4 look. I think black is more likely to take on c3, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So fine. So I'm going to just delete all those so no one gets confused. What's the delete 14 moves? Yes, all gone. There we go. Fine. All right. So let's see now. Next one, David Walker against Jonathan Nelson.
David Walker is one of those players who, I don't know, I'm sure everyone has them, sort of lower-rated bogey opponents who have never had a lot of fun against. I remember suffering at least a couple of times against David Walker. Plays always these kind of flank openings and fairly positional and very rational.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. I thought he was more of a G3 bishop G2 person, but this is very direct.
He's gone D4.
Okay, so black's not afraid of an endgame with his king move because white's bishop would be blocked in and the king would settle happily on C7. I think that would be fairly harmless. Playable for white, but fairly harmless. E4, okay. So it looks like a reversed French already, doesn't it? It looks like.
Yeah.
Bishop E2, bishop E7.
Well, let's get us attack.
There's black there. I think I might have. I don't know. It depends what white's going to do. I thought white might be going to break with F3, but if he's playing on the queen side, then this is fair enough. I was wondering if black, I might have been tempted to play an early H5 and try and put white off any F. Try and attack a bit directly. But it's probably naive. I don't know.
Yeah, because white's going on the queen side.
White's definitely playing on. White's not showing any interest in playing F3 at the moment, which is what I just wondered if there was some way of actually, like in the advanced French, trying to use that pawn on E4 to generate an attack on the king side. But of course, playing it not so crazily sharply is very legit as well. The knight on A6 is interesting. I wonder where that's headed. Maybe to E6. Maybe with some kingside aspirations via G5 or something. I don't know.
G5 and bishop D7.
Okay.
So both sides are really focusing mainly on the queen side advances first of all.
Yeah, I'm sure black wants to play on the king side, but feels it would be prudent to make some sort of defensive gestures on the queen side first. I'm not quite sure about bishop D7 because does that mean that black's considering taking back with the bishop if white takes on C6? I wouldn't have thought so. And if not, then I'm assuming you're taking with the pawn if b takes C6, then it's not so obvious to me that's the square I'd want my bishop on.
Yeah, I'm imagining he's still thinking of taking with the pawn.
Yeah, in which case, does that feel like, maybe he's trying to force the issue, but I'm sure that white could play something like A4 here if he wanted to as well. So I don't think bishop D7 doesn't feel to me like it sort of forces the issue in any very convincing way. But okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Another position with lots of potential.
Yes. Okay, let's see Paul Townsend against David Mooney.
Sorry, I'm going to have to mention White Rose yet again because Paul Townsend was my captain at White Rose for many years, and a wonderful captain he was too. And I've played in sort of European club cups with him and all that kind of thing as well.
Yes.
He's another guy I have very high regard for. And a pretty dangerous player as well. He's sort of, on days when he's playing well, he looks quite formidable.
So we've got a Queen's Gambit accepted.
Play with E3. So this gives black, it cuts out one or two options from black's repertoire, but it does give black added options of playing things like E5 here.
E5 was played.
Yeah, one of the things it cuts out is, so people who like to play against knight F3 and E4 with some system with bishop G4, obviously E3 cuts those things out. It's just, yeah, there are some useful quirks for white, but E5 is the most challenging, line, which is different from what you get after knight F3. So. Okay, so white usually plays with an isolated queen pawn and
bishop B4 check. Yeah.
So we've got a long question about Magnus and the World Championship.
Yes, will he continue? Yeah, I kind of feel like he will, but maybe if he can't be bothered, it's possible, isn't it?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think can't be bothered is slightly.
Well, it's a lot of effort, isn't it, to play?
That's not how I'd frame it. I think it's a lot of. It's a huge amount of hard work and a lot of emotional investment. And, unless you're interested in record breaking, because I think if he wins it one more time, he equals the record number of times. And if he wins it two more times, he surpasses the record. So he might, if he's interested in those kind of records, and certainly Magnus strikes me as somebody who's interested in chess history. That's one of the things I've always liked about him. But bother, I'm sure it's not in terms of bother, but it's a huge amount of work, and it does obviously might distract him from other goals he wants to pursue. And I got the impression he didn't actually enjoy his match with Nepo as much as you might imagine somebody to enjoy a match with that margin, because it just felt like they matched each other very, very well until the point where Nepo collapsed. And this game 6 was a fantastic achievement. But after that, watching Nepo's sort of psychological
No,
collapse,
that wasn't so fun.
it
Yeah.
wasn't great fun for me, I have to say. I didn't really. I felt quite sad at times that somebody as strong as Nepo could play as badly as he did. And I don't know. I mean, I can see why Magnus is in two minds. I think Magnus is. This is a very interesting variation, by the way. I recently played Bishop G5 as. Can we share the link to the live games?
Yeah. What I'll do, but I have to. It's sort of a slightly convoluted way of me doing it, so I'm going to have to copy something and send it to my other machine.
Honestly, have no
what
idea
I'm going to do is
whether Magnus is going to play or not. But I take what he said to be reasonably in earnest. The only thing I didn't like in what Magnus, I mean, obviously, I was disappointed if Magnus doesn't defend the world title, because it's never good for chess that somebody backs out when they could be there like that. But I was more disappointed by him specifying that he would play if it was Ali Reza. I thought that, sort of put pressure on and slightly interrupted the natural flow of events in a way that I wasn't that happy about. But
thanks.
I have no idea what impact it had on Ali Reza, but he obviously hasn't looked like anywhere close to being the person who's going to be playing Magnus. So.
Yeah.
By the way,
all right. Come on then. This line here. This Queen's Gambit accepted.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, I think I had this idea that playing Bishop G5 might be quite a good idea. This was with the Bishop on D6 for Black instead of B4. With the Bishop on B4, I would have been tempted to play Bishop G5. But okay, after H6, H3, that possibility's gone. And Black needs to find ways
for the follow, Eshifu.
The main thing for Black is to find a good way to develop the Bishop on C8. So if I was White, I would look to trying to stop a simple Bishop F5, I think.
Yeah, because Bishop F5 looks like that's going to come.
But also with the Bishop on D6, whenever White plays D5, Black has the move Knight E5. I don't know whether D5 ever comes into consideration here because the Bishop is on B4.
So what about D5 straight away? So
well,
D5.
I was about to say that in this particular, I don't know whether immediately Black can play Knight A5, and if the Bishop retreats, then play Bishop C3 and try and grab a pawn.
So Bishop back somewhere. Like that. And take the pawn on D5.
Yeah.
Just like Queen takes.
Yeah, this is probably fine for Black.
Yeah.
There may not be zero compensation, but I doubt if it's what White should be doing. So D5 not immediately, but as a sort of a potential idea. I don't quite understand, other than that, what Black wants with Bishop B4. I mean, for example, if White played A3, is Black really taking on C3, or is Black going?
Because you can always drop back to D6, can't you?
You could, but then I'm not sure. I'm sure that A3, it may not be a hugely move, but it feels like a move I'd rather have than not have. It would enable me to put Queen on D3 without worrying about Knight B4, something like that. There would be definite virtues to having a pawn on. It also enables that Bishop to drop back to A2 if it needs to. So I don't think A3 is a move you want to give White for free. So then I wonder if Black's taking on C3 and trying somehow to play on the light squares. But I'm comparing that with something like a Nimzo Indian. I think Black can suffer a little bit from the fact that he doesn't have an E-pawn. And, the move, if the knight leaves C6, then as White, I want to put my knight on E5 and support that Bishop on C4 and try and sort of suggest that F7 might be a bit weak if the knight leaves C6. So I don't know. I quite like Black's setup, but I don't quite understand the Bishop on B4.
Yeah,
if I'm honest. But there may well be some stuff that I don't know about here, but just intuitively that looks slightly odd to me.
Okay, so probably played Rook E1.
Yeah, David.
Bishop F5, and then Queen B3.
Okay, yeah. So I was wondering about trying to stop Bishop F5 with some Queen D3 or something, but then maybe Knight A5 then is awkward.
Yeah.
So so now White is almost certainly. No, I'll stop that sentence mid-flow because it may not be true. I thought at first that White is now threatening D5 because obviously the knight on C6 is needed to cover the bishop. But after D5, Black can take on C3. and take on d5 if queen takes, or have knight a5 if pawn takes.
I mean, presumably black cannot now take on. Oh no, because the bishop. Yeah.
No, black can take on c3 now because we have to take back with the queen. And then black could try and play some kind of light square blockade with knight d5 and so on.
Okay, so yes, right. So bishop takes
a little bit.
You have to sit back with the queen because otherwise knight a5 is.
Yeah, knight a5 would be really annoying.
Yeah.
So queen takes and then knight d5, I guess.
Yeah.
Or even something something like knight knight e7 preparing the other knight to d5, something like this. The thing here is that queen b3 can still be met by knight a5.
Yep.
I think if that weren't true, then this probably wouldn't be very clever for black. But as it is, so maybe queen a3 or something here, just to. Oh, but then there's knight b4. So I don't quite know what Paul's got in mind here. Actually, maybe there's some other idea that I haven't.
Yeah. Okay. So bishop takes, which I think is just our move, not a played move.
Yes.
Looks like it could be an interesting thing for black to do now.
Yes. Well, at least it's an attempt to sort of set up a fairly thematic blockade on the light squares.
Yeah.
I mean, white's still got more. It's not like white's c1 bishop is a bad piece. It's not like black can say, the bishop pair doesn't mean anything here. But if the white square control's good enough, black's position might be okay.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not quite sure where I want to put that white queen. And I mean, it's possible Paul had a similar thought when he went queen b3. It's not so clear what's the best place to put her. Okay, so of course, if the bishop retreats to d6, can white take on b7 is the other question, I guess.
Oh, right. Yes. So take on b7 now.
And if black plays knight a5, the only move is queen b5.
Queen b5. And c6.
Yeah.
The bishop on f5 is on prise.
Oh, the bishop on f5 is on prise. I'm not sure I'd even noticed that. Well, actually, I'm sure that I hadn't even noticed that. In which case, this is probably the right. This is probably fine for white then.
Yeah.
Because, after knight takes c4, queen takes f5 is probably a better move than just recapturing the knight, although both are fine. No, I had intended black to go c6 here, but.
No.
Thank you, Kenworthy, not Gary.
See you later, Kenworthy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but
okay.
This queen b3 is normally okay, but I just a little bit nervous because all these knight a5s are so often in the position.
Thanks for the follow. I am Harriet H.
Oh wow!
I can guess who that is.
Who could that be?
Who could that be? Okay. Fine. All right. I'm going to delete the rest of the moves because I think they're not out there. I think there are
we want
an actual moves.
Try not to influence the play too much.
Okay. Let's look at the next one. Charlie Story against John Cooper. And so, do we have
we've certainly
got the sniper variation?
We have no sniping going on, that's for sure.
Any sniping? B3.
Do you see? That's very. So, to be fair to Charlie, B3 looks like a move designed to stop G6 to avoid the possibility of having to play against what Charlie rather over broadly describes as the sniper. I mean, if he claims anything with C5 and G6 or C4 and G3 to be the sniper, then it's a very broad definition which covers a huge number of chess openings. But B3 is at least looks like an attempt to prevent it.
Cuts it out.
Yeah, cuts out. So he didn't play it himself, but he cut out his opponent's one.
Yeah.
Knight C6. I'm not a big fan of
reverse sniper, says Kevin.
No, this isn't. This is an anti-sniper, if anything. I'd say this is really an anti-sniper.
Okay, Badger is after the
yeah
games. I'm going to just copy the link that Pass Pawn just pasted into the chat. I think. Oh no! I've done something bad. Okay, let me just do that and then go back to there. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was being slightly facetious. I think you mean 2 G6 is a move, and that is true. It is a move, but it
Okay.
changes the play. No, it doesn't stop G6. I understand that, but I think it does discourage it. Bishop B2, knight F6, E5, and E6 is possible. As something that I think, for some reason, when it probably shouldn't have done, arose in some discussions with the England team at one point, because all these England international players trying to avoid theory all the time.
Avoid the sniper. Yeah.
Well, no, definitely not avoiding the sniper. I think they were avoiding some other Sicilians, but
yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy about these Sicilians with B3 because it always feels to me like if Black can establish pawns on E5 and C5 and D6, that he's pretty rock solid in the centre. Exactly what Black's done here is what I would.
Yeah. So I guess Charlie's going to try for what, C3, D4.
I don't know, because White sometimes plays it almost like a kind of delayed King's Gambit and goes for F4.
Ah, okay.
But having put the knight on F3, that attempt to sort of open up the B2 bishop isn't an option. So, yeah, I don't know. White can go C3 and D4, but then what does the bishop on B2 say about that? Does it say, thanks a lot? If you were Jonathan Rowson, you would talk to the bishop on B2 and find out his wishes. And it might just tell you it didn't want to be there in the first place.
Bishop B5.
Okay, that makes sense. So if he is playing any kind of C3 and D4 stuff, it clearly makes sense to
well, he is. He's done C3.
Yeah. I'm sort of thinking that even if you think about Rossolimo Sicilian, so 3 bishop B5 against knight C6, many of the positions where White ends up taking on B6, on C6, and Black has to take back with the pawn. If Black can then set up D5 and E5 in the centre against a bishop on B2, Black's doing fine. And I imagine that's true here as well. You see, I think, after bishop takes C6, I suspect Black was intending to go knight takes because Black has put the knight on E7. But structurally, B takes is quite fine as well, as long as Black can hold that centre.
Yeah. And then White would eventually, I'm sure White would still go D4 at some point.
So is White's argument now, if he's playing bishop E2, his argument must be that he just put the bishop on B5 to kind of encourage knight E7.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that it even needed to.
G6.
G6. Yeah, knight G6 might be worth a look as well. Anything which to use. Okay, so now I guess White will do his D4 thing.
Yeah, so Charlie played D4 and John's fianchettoed.
Okay, so he's allowing White to exchange queens if he wants to.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you do, the bishop's a bit behind the C pawn.
Well, we can easily end up with a position where either side is, where if White plays C4, then both sides have a weak point on their sort of, in old language, Queen 4 square, don't they? Yeah. But I guess Black's knight is quicker getting there. And if Black's knight comes there first, then you may have to take that, and then you prevent the possibility of White's knight getting to D5 in turn. But I do also wonder whether I'm not sure this exchange of queens is entirely how I would have played it with Black, because there's also possibilities of trying to put your knight on C4, and then if Black counters that with B5, you undermine with A4. I think there may be ways White can play this to make some sense of structure. I don't know. It seems to me Black could also have played Queen C7 and kept the queens on the board. I don't think there was anything urgent going on there which necessitated allowing this. But he may be perfectly happy without the queens, and he may be right, but it would be interesting to see how that develops.
So takes, and we do get an exchange of queens already.
Oh, I don't like knight takes because I wanted to be ready to meet C4 with knight D4, I think.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. I'd be more inclined to play
more go king takes.
And then if White goes C4, we get knight D4 first. Whereas now, there's the possibility that White might be just as quick as Black. I suppose after knight takes C4, knight C6, knight C3, knight D4, Black still gets there first. But it feels a bit more kind of marginal now. strange. I'm not sure that black had anything to worry about with the king on d8 particularly.
So yeah, you're right, but it does still take white a while to get to d5.
No, it does still take a while. It may be that black is trying to encourage c4 and that he likes that position with knight d4 so much he thinks it's worth doing with a tempo less. And knight d2 might be more. He's trying to put that knight back
the other knight
towards f4, which is the square I wanted it to go to ages ago. But there is this weakness on b6, which I don't know how seriously that needs to be taken. But knight c4 is certainly a move.
Knight c4,
The trouble is, it's not just the b6 square. It means that the c5 pawn might become vulnerable. So, bishop a3 or something might become a legitimate move if there's no b6 available. Okay, there's knight e6. That's probably not so urgent. But knight b6, knight d6 check are all things black has to think about a bit now.
Yeah, and black actually just calmly castles. So white could now get the bishop pair.
White could also put that knight on d5 without having to allow black, the knight d4 move. Knight b6 to d5 is possible. But knight b6 taking the bishop is also...
Yes. In any case, he goes knight b6.
Well, as I was going to say, also knight b6 and sitting there is also a possibility. There's like...
Yeah. Okay. Right. And now he does do the move you just suggested just now, bishop a3.
Yeah, I just was wondering about that because one thing is that you don't need to take on c8 immediately. If you can make black's knight go to e6, then that bishop isn't going anywhere for quite a long time. Yeah. And it worries me that the way black handled this sort of made it a lot easier for white than it should have been. Now it feels like white's...
Yeah, so there is a bit of pressure now, isn't there? Because this c5 pawn here is tying up this knight. The bishop can't get out because the knight's in the way.
Yeah, there is some pressure, and it feels like it came from nowhere.
Okay, and bishop c4.
No, this isn't the structure I would have allowed for black, I have to say.
Yes. Okay, question. Which boards are the under 1850 section for Yorkshire? Now, I think that we don't have live boards for the under 1850. So I think we have live boards for the open, the minor counties and the under 2050. And the others we do have, we get a running total. Actually, it might be a good time in just a second to let's just have a look at the running total, see if we've got any results yet. So if I just share...
I would suspect few results at this stage.
Probably not yet. Yeah, let's just put that on there. Anything, if you just refresh that page, Peter, and I think it may be too early to get any results yet. Oh yes, no, we do have some. Okay, so the scores on the doors we have... right. Let me just see it bigger. Yorkshire 1-0 up so far against Middlesex. Essex 3-1 against Surrey. Surrey
2-1, I think.
It says 3-1 on mine.
Does it?
In the under 1450s, and then
it must have updated again. It's just updated again since That's amazing. Okay.
And then the Surrey CCA we have 3.5, 1.5 against Warwickshire. So an early lead for Surrey in the under 1650s. We have 1-1 in the under 2050s, Essex against Surrey. And no games finished yet in either the minor counties or the open. And Badger 1989 is saying Yorkshire all the way. I'm sure Northumberland will have something to say about that, Badger 1989. Okay.
That's probably Will Middlesex in the under 1850s.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Okay. So we are back at. Now I better remember to put it on the stream as well. Okay. So let's put. That's where we were, isn't it?
That is where we were. Yes.
Back at the championship.
Yeah, and the black's in quite an unpleasant bind now. I must say, it's quite difficult to see how he's going to.
Yes, and he's played. John Cooper has played now knight CD8.
Yes.
Which I suppose isn't a move you ideally want to play. You have to maneuver a bit to get the pieces free.
I can't entirely see how that... I can see how that helps him sort of cover his e6 knight. Maybe he didn't want white taking on c8 and e6, but it doesn't really help you with the fundamental problem of unraveling your pieces. I'm I'm struggling slightly to see what move will help with that fundamental problem.
Yep.
No, it looks quite tough for black. I think he got in a bit of a mess.
Okay.
John Cooper is somebody I have played with in the last year, actually.
John Cooper?
Yeah.
I've played John Cooper, but it would be 20 years ago.
Right, no, I played him in the weekend at Hull back in September, I think. October.
Very nice.
And it was quite a tough game and a very different sort of position.
I think we do have more boards. No, do we have more boards? We do. We have more boards because it's more than just the top 6 boards.
Oh, wow, okay. Oh, yes, they said that it would be definitely the top 6 and they would try for more.
And I think they've succeeded
quite well. So this is Pete Gayson, okay.
Pete Gayson against Graham Oswald. And we've got a Sicilian.
Yet another White Rose stalwart.
Najdorf, Sicilian.
Oh, wow. Queen B7.
King H.
I'm glad you went fast through this. It enabled me not to have to reveal my ignorance of what's going on. I know some lines of Bishop C4, but these funny things with quick F3 seems... I mean, most of the Bishop C4 systems, White tries to play with the quick F4, F5 as one goal, and sometimes they play with Queen F3 out to G3 or H3 as... But F3... on one hand, it feels like that should be relatively comfortable for black. On the other hand, black's development with the queen on b7 is in itself slightly awkward. So what maybe White's game plan is that if you develop relatively normally and simply, the fact that the queen is slightly awkward may count in your favor. But she can relocate once the initial danger on that diagonal has passed. She can presumably relocate to c7 and knight c6. So it looks like black should be relatively comfortable. But who knows?
That castle's here. I'm just wondering whether we're going to see any...
Now I really feel like I can safely say that this is a pretty comfortable position for black. Black has got most of the things you look for in this line, I think. And next step might be some kind of a d5 break, possibly in conjunction with kicking the knight. Okay, if you kick the knight out of c3 and play d5, then you might have opened up some new squares for it on c5 or something. But also just a simple d5 break, I think it will leave black reasonably comfortable.
We get this in a minute. So rook a8, a4, b4, knight back.
Okay, so now White's looking to play knight d4.
Yeah.
Which at least forces that bishop back. And
so e5.
That's what provokes e5.
Knight g3,
now
trying to come around.
So beckons that each pawn move creates a new avenue for the opponent to explore.
And black plays d5 here.
Plays d5 anyway, ignores the...
Yeah, I suppose this one just kind of is trying to swap off that e-pawn maybe so that the outpost on f5 isn't so powerful.
So is he, after knight f5, what's black playing?
Let's see. So knight f5, if he does that.
Was that played?
No, that's just us.
That's us.
Speculating.
I'm sort of thinking that we might be in moderately promising exchange sacrifice territory here. If black took on e4, something like knight takes e7, queen takes bishop c5, and queen's somewhere. Perhaps to b7 again, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So then we have to look at taking.
Yeah, the problem is I think we have to take back here. If we could sort of find some way to take on f3 and win and not lose a whole rook, that would be promising. But I can't see.
Yeah, so if takes, if the bishop does try and come back
again, and we can take on g2. But that's, you've got moves like knight g4, but the black queen isn't properly placed to follow up on this, I think.
Yeah.
Or knight e4. Knight e4 is possible, but still. But then no, I don't believe any of that really. Queen e3 or something, and there's no follow-up.
Lots of material we've given
here.
Yeah,
I think probably we need... I suspect black will think...
Lots of Graham Oswald's material.
Yeah, well, it's not mine, so what do I care?
Yeah.
Give it away. You've got to explore. You've got to check those things out, I think.
Yeah. So d5 is where we got to. I'm going to just delete those so no one thinks they're played.
Yes, I would
And that's where we're at.
I kind of think that if white... I suppose white could also take on d5 and look at the move knight f5. I mean, knight f5 is always worth looking at. One of my favourite moves in chess are white knights.
It's a nice move, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of so often comes with some sort of an attack attached to it. Okay, so this position is full of tension.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at. Yeah, we're waiting for
Yes. So I'm going to keep hopping through. We're going to finish this stream at past. So let's see if we can get to... let's see where we can get. And then we'll be back again in half an hour. We'll just take a half-hour break to pace ourselves, because it's a big day with all these matches going on.
We're just not curious time control, which I want to be part of. Yeah.
Okay, so we now have Zhang against Zheng and a Sicilian defense with knight c3 and f4.
Okay, this is interesting, because I kind of always think that if you know white's going to follow through with their plan of playing f4, then e6 is probably the best way to play against two knights.
E6 is good against this, yeah.
Well, I know it's good against g3 as well. I remember some, against people who wanted to play the closed, e6 and d5 presented some problems sometimes.
Yeah.
And against f4, it's not bad either. Although in this position, there are some things white can do. Maybe some. I mean, black can also play it with a6 and then d5, because there are some bishop b5 check things which are worth exploring. But let's see what he does.
Yeah, he did do a bishop b5 check.
No, a6 intending d5 is another pretty decent way of bringing that about for black.
Bishop d7, but black shouldn't be frightened of this line, I think. Takes
no,
d3, d4, knight e2, c6. Here we go. And okay, so white's gonna try and do we'll try and attack on the king side, basically.
I think black's probably going to go g6, I was about to say, but lose some of the credit for predicting that.
Yeah, so this move they sometimes do if they're going to go
time here, because they've actually, I mean, I'm not one to talk, but they've spent a fair bit of time reaching this position. I wonder where they had.
No, they haven't. They've played hundreds of moves.
Oh, they've played hundreds of moves. Sorry. I thought this was
no. They've been.
Okay. No, they haven't spent any time at all then. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for white to get f5 in, which is the virtue of black's setup with knight e7 and g6. f5 is going to be a tough call. So I guess white's looking for other ways to use the bishop. So possibilities here. Maybe an a3 and b4 plan is in the air, perhaps. Also,
maybe. I was thinking that he might, they sometimes go c3, but you wouldn't want to here because the d3 pawn's going to be really weak. So I thought if he's just doing his
bishop takes, Tash, maybe that's one reason for bishop d2. A bishop takes would be okay.
Yeah. Okay. C3 takes and bishop takes. Yeah. Maybe that's what he's doing.
I mean, something like bishop e1 to h4 isn't sort of completely impossible either, although you kind of maneuver it all that way and then wonder quite what you're doing with it when it gets there perhaps. But
But looking at the moves, I think what he's doing, right, with that bishop d2 is if he's going queen e1, queen h4, it's just that if the knight came in on b4, maybe he's going to take it off.
Well, it's also useful to cover b4, but I mean, how if it's really hard to play f5, and you need to be a bit cautious about the plan of putting the queen on h4 anyway, because that almost always involves them playing f5. And if I can just say take with the e pawn, and then you play bishop h6, and then I play something like f6, and I'm kind of closing your attack down a bit. You need a second wave of pieces to cause trouble there. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if white doesn't sort of at least have in mind that he could make gestures on both sides of the board. I mean, if black's ready to meet b4 with sort of b5 and c4, then that could backfire on white. But who knows? I mean, a3 here doesn't look silly to me. Oh, he is going for plan A anyway. That's interesting.
Hi, Bagator superfan. Queen h4. Okay, so white's carrying on with this plan.
Slightly carrying on regardless. I don't know whether it's a good carrying on regardless.
Whether it's a good idea to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so my worry is that after f5, black takes with the e pawn, knight g5 is met by h6, or bishop h6 is met essentially by f6, probably immediately.
Okay.
And I don't really know where the attack goes then. Meanwhile, black could play on the queen side with b5 or something.
Yeah.
I think since the rooks are connected, you can always meet a4 with a6. And the other thing worth noting is that usually if white plays g4 to try to play f5, that's the moment for black to play f5.
This is what we're going to see very, very soon. So b5, g4.
Oh, is that exactly what happened?
This is exactly what happened. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Give
so
the commentator some credit here.
Was played.
This all happened. Wow. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, Xiaofeng Zheng. And this game, this game could have been played. This was played. This stuff was played a lot in like the 90s, wasn't it? I'm sure this exact game would have been played before.
I mean, yeah, there were people like Hebden playing it probably in the 80s, weren't there? And by the 90s, he probably was thinking better of it. But yes, there was a lot of
takes.
Yeah, he takes
e5. We have
e5. You see, I just sort of immediately feel here that there are nice ways to put black's minor pieces. I want to put a knight on d5 and the other one via d6, via d8 to e6. I just think that black's knights are kind of pretty. The only dodgy minor piece black has is the bishop on g7, which is genuinely quite shut out.
Yeah. Now, I mean, white can always threaten mate with like a knight g5.
White can,
but actually, it just can be met by h6.
Absolutely. I was definitely planning on not allowing that one.
Yeah. Okay. So 95.
Do you agree with me? Do you like black quite here? Or?
I do, because I used to play this for white a lot, and I did have a problem with these kind of lines, and if black could get in this f5 and the stuff, I do like it. I mean, like in general, I would have liked white to play this opening for white, but this type of thing when black does it was always a bit of a problem for me, I felt.
I wonder, given the the position we've got here, I don't know. I can see that there are some virtues to what white's doing as well. I wonder if it's worth white playing knight g5, h6, knight f3, just losing 2 tempi to soften up that g6 pawn, and then trying to play king h1, rook g1, or queen g3, or something which attacks g6.
Yeah, you never know.
Just because although black's got sort of potentially pretty minor pieces, it's not so easy to make major inroads with black as it sometimes is. So it occurs to me there might be time to do that kind of thing. And if you're
doing it, why not do the king h1 and the rook g1 first?
Okay, I mean, if the knight, I'm not even sure that knight d5 straight away was the priority I would have had, because it might be useful if you're doing all that. It might be useful to have some queen d5 move for black or something when you've got your king on h1 and your rook on g1. But now that the knight's on d5, you may have a very good point and do those moves first. Although if you're doing a lot of preparation, that's a different version.
King f2. I guess it's the same idea.
It's sort of the same idea, but well, maybe he has in mind the really super accelerated attack at going rook h1, the other rook to g1, queen out of the way, and then pushing the h pawn as well. That could be.
Whoa.
I'm trying to look for reasons.
I would then suspect black's got like c4 or some kind of thing on the queen side, or some
whatever
way
black does with c4 on the queen side. With the king on f2, you're almost certainly going to want to try and ignore it. But maybe he just has a point that the king is somehow safer on f2 than it is on h1. But I think he's got to look out for knight e3 as a move for black here. Not immediately, perhaps, but as an idea. It's one thing. It's okay. I mean, black can do that anyway, and maybe that's an annoying resource black has from white's point of view. But it seems like if it's check, black's going to have to. White might have to take it or lose more tempi. So,
right, black.
Oh, he's offering to exchange queens.
Of queens.
That's actually my first instinct was to go boo, but it's actually very sensible, I think.
Yeah. And white drops back.
And white obviously doesn't want any of that. Oh,
in comes the knights.
So are they? These moves are not happening real time, are they?
These have happened already. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Black is
rook fc1.
Yeah.
Rook here, and
It's got to be
this
said
square up
without.
here.
I don't. It's got to be said that C1 and A1 were not the squares White probably had in mind for his rooks when he went King F2. But
Yeah.
I mean, it feels to me like Black can make C4 around here and make it very clear that he's the one who's pushing. You know, the one who's
C4,
attacking.
yeah.
C4 is possible, I think.
But how? This isn't. Is this really bad for White, or is it?
No, I'm not sure it's really bad because the bishop on G7 is still the worst minor piece at the moment. Although, you know, maybe it can. If you can play bishop F8, Queen somewhere, and bishop C5, it could be that Black is. I definitely feel I'd rather be Black here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Nice to see that opening again.
Oh, so that's where we've got to, yeah.
That's where we've got to.
Yeah,
I'm going to just.
Oh, that was. I mean, no complaints. They've put a lot of moves on the board.
Yeah. And we'll just do one more now, and then we'll take our break, and then we'll be back. Okay, so Alan Walton against Gustavo Leon Cazares.
Is this a Trompovsky? Alan Walton's one of the Trompovsky regulars.
It is.
I hesitate to mention that he's now yet another White Rose player.
Another White Rose. No life boards for the under 1850 section. Yes. Okay, bishop F4, E6.
Is this the one where Black goes bishop D6 or something?
Oh, is it?
I don't know. It might be. I think it is, because otherwise E6 doesn't really look like it's challenging White's idea of F3 and E4.
Yeah.
I think the idea here is slightly odd bishop D6
played. Yes.
And now, obviously, if White moved the bishop away, it would be mate in 2 for Black, yeah, or 3 or something.
Right. So this is the quiz. Okay, so if the bishop comes back to C1,
even that square,
then we have
Queen H4 and Queen takes G3, of course.
Oh,
flashy.
Good grief!
Yeah,
that's very flash.
Want to be flashy.
So this of course did not happen.
This did
not in the counties final. It certainly didn't.
Absolutely not.
No. Alan Walton.
Nor hopefully anywhere else, actually. I mean, I hope this hasn't happened too often.
It could. It's a bit of a trick. But yeah, so we've got so Alan.
So the reason that this is more interesting for Black than, you know, just allowing White, first of all, it makes sense to exchange a pair of pieces if White's going E4. The other thing is with that knight on D6, Black's probably going to attack White's pawn center with F5. I think that's the pawn lever Black's looking for. And then if White goes E5, Black has a square on F7.
E4, F5 already. This is what.
Yeah, so if E5, you get knight F7 and D6 comes and, well.
E5, knight F7.
This isn't the line I would pick against the Trompovsky, but I think it's sort of viable and there's some interesting possibilities for Black. C3. F4 looks natural in that position, but okay.
Bishop D3. Alan gets out his piece.
Yes, if I was White, though, I would look at playing F4 and knight F3 unless I was worried about some... You know, G5 breaks look a bit outlandish, don't they? Or are they?
G5?
Well, if I got F4 instead of bishop D3 or something.
Oh, I see.
Is Black really going G5 as a pawn break? Otherwise, I'm giving my E5 pawn some decent support, you know?
You wouldn't have to go G5 straight away, though.
No, that is certainly true. If you
do it in a bit, couldn't you?
Yeah, or not at all. Either of the above. Probably not immediately. But you know what I mean? It's sort of Black's got, I mean, one of the appeals of this position for Black is that there are several pawn breaks, and he's kind of opted for one I hadn't particularly thought of. But there's C5, there's D6, there's potentially G5.
Yeah.
Having said all that, I think I'd rather be White. But I think I'd rather I want to put my knight on F3 here. Alan, why do you want your knight on E2? I don't know. It's okay, but I kind of think it feels to me like some F4 and knight F3 is the natural way to go. But maybe there's...
I wonder if Alan's wanting to go G4 at some point.
Monstrous. Well, G4 does... You know, you've got to watch out for knight G5 if you play G4 as White. You know, that knight on F7 may have hidden qualities.
Yeah.
May hop out. Black is now threatening to win a pawn for tactics devotees.
Right, let me work out what you're saying here about this pawn. You're going to go take on D4 and then you're going to do a queen H4 and take on D4 with the queen.
Yeah, I'm going to take twice on d4 is what you mean, isn't it?
Hi, Kingstar. Welcome back. I'm glad you can hear us now. Yeah. So okay.
I'm going to take twice on d4, and obviously the point is I've got a pawn on f5, so there's no bishop h7 check at the end, which
yes,
it's well worth being sure of before you embark on that sort of thing.
Yes.
So
why do queen a4 here?
Wow, that is one unusual way of dealing with that problem.
Yeah.
So black doesn't have time for queen h4, g3, knight takes e5 because of taking the queen. Honestly, that's my first thought in the position. Can I still get my tactic in?
Yeah. This is a slightly funny way of putting his queen. But
I find white's set up slightly odd given what possibilities they were, but I mean, it's all quite fun.
For sure. Yeah. And I guess he might swing his queen across later on somehow.
I'm not sure about d6. I quite like the sort of flexibility of the pawn structure we've already got. Although d6 is, yeah, I mean, white's d4 pawn is going to take a little bit of defending, I guess.
So takes, knight take. Okay.
That's very sort of c3 Sicilian, isn't it?
That looks, yeah, because look, it can go there and it can go there.
Yeah, it's got two squares, so
a6.
I think after. Do you think after? No, a6 just makes sense anyway. Rook d1. Okay.
C takes.
Yep.
And knight takes, and this is where we're at.
Yes. Well, I'd be prepared to stick my neck out and say this position probably hasn't ever arisen before.
Okay.
This looks to me like new chess going on here.
So probably Lichess probably just can sort of confirm or deny that.
Yeah, probably there's about 50.
I'm not gonna even.
No, I don't want to know. If there are 50 games, I really don't want to know.
All right. So fine.
I don't know. I sort of think that black ought to be doing okay.
Yeah. Well, white's going to presumably castle at some point, and then
black can create an IQP now. Yeah, they're just
just taking on d4.
Yeah, the question is whether that's. I mean, that's sort of not something the f7 knight would probably necessarily vote for because it might want to go to e5 otherwise. But it feels to me like, these IQPs where white's knight is on a3, I kind of think, really, is that the way to get the sort of piece play that you need to compensate? So if I could take on d4 and if pawn takes, just play bishop d7 or something with a view to playing b5 and shutting that knight out of the game, if there are no tactical things. So b5, I suspect, we could look at b5 and sacking the exchange, but that might be a step too far. But just playing bishop d7 and then with a view to playing b5 without having to sack the exchange would be simpler. And I don't know. I think black's done okay. In fact, it's not incredibly easy to find a square for white's queen that defends d4. My hunch is that black's sort of doing okay here. It's just, I don't know, white's pieces don't sort of give me a hugely... I'm not getting a huge impression of harmony from them.
Yeah.
Might be harsh, but they look like that, several of them are sort of not that badly placed in themselves, but they don't seem to be working together that effectively.
Okay, well, we will see.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to wind this stream up. Let's have a look at the scores on the doors, and then we're going to take a break. We'll be back. What are we now?
We've shot over time, but we can come back.
Overshot, but we'll be back at basically 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I just take that one off, this is the scores. If you just refresh that.
Just refresh them. See if. Oh my word! The Essex lead goes up every time we refresh.
Okay, so Essex is storming into the lead in the under 1450s with a 5-1 lead. Surrey equally is doing very well against.
They're compensating for the under 1450s by
under 1650s, 5.5, 1.5. Yeah. And then the other matches are all at much earlier stages, we've got Yorkshire 1.5 against Middlesex in the under 1850s. We have 1-1 Essex, Surrey. In the under
So we just check if the half in the minor counties is something we've looked at yet. If one of the games we've looked at.
Yeah, if you just click on the thing,
Yes.
so the half is Alexander New against Chris Archer Lock. So we didn't see.
It's actually the top game before the ones we looked at. After the ones we looked. I mean,
fine.
Yeah, Chris Archer Lock. Okay, there's a name I've seen many times over the years.
Yep, and we have still all games going in the Open, Northumberland against Yorkshire. All right, so we're gonna finish this stream now, but do join us again just very slightly later this afternoon. We'll be back at
maybe a little after 4 o'clock, because I think we've overshot by quite a lot.
Slightly after 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
For more action in the counties final. Okay, thanks everyone so far for watching.
See you soon.